Welcome back, everybody. It's episode 16 of the What's He On About Cricket podcast, and it is a special episode as we are joined by our first ever guest. The infamous cricket content creator Charlie Cooke joins us for a Champions Trophy preview. That's all to come. But first, we're going to dive into Australia versus Sri Lanka. Then, we've got the thinker of the week. And this week, the thinker is that we're going to reveal at the end of the episode, so you got to listen to it all the way through to find out, is who has the most ducks in ODI cricket history. And the first clue, well, it's not really a clue actually. I'm just going to tell you, he's on 34 ducks. So that's the question to think about over the episode. Who has the most one day international ducks? So 0 runs scored and out. That's all to come. So join me on this special episode and make yourself comfortable as you ask yourself, what is he on about? Australia lose 2-0 to Sri Lanka in the ODIs. The Australians have been slating off the Sri Lankans for the last few weeks now. They've been pummeling them in the test game. But time for a bit of medicine from Sri Lanka. Time to say, here's how you play one day cricket, lads. And don't just all the experienced lads go and sack us off. All right, because the Sri Lankans are going to make you pay for it. And that's exactly what happened. Sri Lanka beat Australia by a total of 223 runs over the series. Jeepers creepers. And everyone's saying that the Australian team is, oh, it's really depleted. It's really reduced side. But other than the three pacers, Cummins, Stark, Hazelwood, it's not actually far off a full strength team. Steve Smith's there, Travis Head's there, Marnus Labuschagne, Josh English. Maxwell, Zampa, all these lads are still playing. They just had two bad games and they've got to accept that. All right. Enough of this saying it's a depleted team because it's really not. They're just missing their key pacers. And the issue in both those two ODIs was not with the bowling, it was actually the batting. Hence why losing by quite so many runs. So it's gutting that Sri Lanka won't be in the Champions Trophy. All right. But I think they deserve to be. And there's going to be more on that later. But that's just to say that Sri Lanka should really be in that tournament, but that's all to come. Now, the lack of paces for Australia, okay? Some say it's great for the young lads, it's great for Spencer Johnson, it's great for Aaron Hardy, it's great for these young lads to come in, learn how to bowl pace in international cricket. Well, yes, to some degree, that is how it works. But it also helps to have some current experienced players there to help them out, current legends to teach them the ways, make that learning more efficient. However, the big three pacers have just sacked off the team and they've said, you know what, I'm going to go home. Injury, children's birth, whatever. All right. But there's no experienced pacers around the group to show them anything. There's no Mitch Marsh, he's out. There's no Marcus Stoinis, he's retired. All right. So these young lads, they say they're getting, good learning experience, but actually, how efficient is that learning experience when there's no one there to teach them other than the coach? No one to pick the brains off. But I think in general, if you look at this as a whole, it's really highlighting the future of Australian cricket. As the legends move away from the international game, the cracks are beginning to show. And the youth of Australian cricket is not really that strong. There's a lot of hyped up players that really aren't performing. So the Aussie selectors are going to have plenty to think about over the next 3 to 5 years. That's for darn sure. So Australia are in the mud. We're going to see how they might get on in the Champions Trophy in a few moments' time. But just before we move on to the next section of the show, clue number one. All right, we know he's on 34 ducks. This is your thinker of the week, by the way. So this player I'm thinking of, he's played over 400 ODIs and he's got an average of 32 with the bat. So there's your clue number one. I'm going to say clue number one. So we're going to take a short break, and when I come back, I'll be joined by Charlie Cooke for the Champions Trophy preview. Welcome on, Charlie. Pleasure to have you. And today we're going to discuss a little bit about the Champions Trophy, a preview of that tournament. So we're gonna start with conditions, then we're gonna dive into each team, have a look at the predictions of the tournament, and we're gonna that's all to come. But to start with, the listeners know there's a thinker of the week, Charlie. I thought I'd let you know just before we get you going with the Champions Trophy. But the question is, who has the most ducks in one day international cricket? Not to be answered right now, just for you to have a think about. It's
Most duck
34 ducks.
whatever,
Say again.
ever. The first most
Ever.
ducks
One day
ever in ODI
international.
cricket.
Who has the most ducks? He's got 34 ducks. All right, I'll give you a clue. He averages 32
Okay,
in
that's fine.
ODI cricket. All right.
I shall
So
ponder on that
good,
for a
you do
while.
that. So let's have a start looking at the tournament as a whole. All right, it's the first ICC tournament in Pakistan since 1996 World Cup. So with India playing all their games in Dubai, what, Charlie, do you reckon we can expect from the Pakistani conditions? Who are they going to suit best? And how are the conditions going to differ in Dubai, do you reckon?
I do think that the Pakistan conditions are going to be relatively flat. I can't see them bringing out too many turning decks like they have done in test matches. I think they're going to be relatively flat. Then you look at who that kind of suits. England, maybe. I mean, they do like a flat deck in Pakistan. Harry Brook likes a flat deck in Pakistan.
Yes.
South Africa's middle order is going to be ridiculous. Um, just firing, they kind of back down to 8 or 9, and you're thinking, okay, they could score a few big scores like they did in the 2023 World Cup. Australia's got a bit of firepower, although they're missing some players. It's probably more the bowlers. I think it probably suits quite a lot of teams being in the kind of era of T20 cricket that we're in now. As if you need someone to almost play two and a half T20s, most teams can do it.
Yeah, I agree.
Um,
It's almost like they produce these sort of shiny wickets. They're kind of flat and shiny, especially for the white ball stuff. As you said, for the test game with Red Bull, recently they've just been creating Bunsons and welcoming any team and just saying, whoever bat first wins, really. But it's going to be different with the white ball stuff, of flat, shiny wickets. We know India are going to play all their games in Dubai. Do you think that actually gives them a bit of an unfair advantage? Do you think actually them playing at the same ground every single game, is that a bit unfair?
Oh yeah, massively. It's completely unfair. It's a joke. But what can you do? I mean, they're gonna pick how they want the pitches. The pitches are going to be completely suited to them, and they know exactly where they're going to play. Whereas every other team in the tournament don't know if they're going to play a game, especially in the semi-final and the final. They don't know if they're going to play in Pakistan or if they're going to play in Dubai. You saw exactly the same thing happen in the T20 World Cup, where India knew that they were going to be playing their semi-final in Guyana, so they picked four spinners in their side because they knew that that deck would turn. And that was why it was picked. They knew they'd get through the group and thought, okay, the semi final might be a bit tough. We'll pick four spinners. And that's exactly what they've done again. Like that Dubai track is going to turn. I'd be amazed if it didn't. The kind of tournaments that we've had recently in Dubai was the Women's T20 World Cup, which was relatively low scoring. I expect to see similar pitches. I think India are going to back that they've got the batting talent and the spin talent, especially without Bumrah. And I think you're going to get a few turning decks, and it's just relatively unfair. But you can't say anything because that's cricket.
Yeah, it's kind of the politics of it all kind of just feels dangerous to touch a bit, and you kind of just sit there and go, all right then, if India play, that's fine. But so for those of you who don't know, Champions Trophy is going to be split up into two groups. All right, a lot of people saying Group B is the group of death, but in my opinion, I actually think Group A holds stronger teams. I think that Group A of including India, New Zealand and Pakistan. I think those three are probably three of the strongest teams in the tournament, and I'd actually say that that is almost harder to get out of. Charlie, do you agree with that, or do you think Group B is a little bit tougher?
Well, Michael Clark in his recent predictions has picked three teams out of that group to go through. So he also thinks that it's a relatively tough group. But no, I'm with you. I think the difference is that with Group B, you could probably see a world maybe before we knew how bad England was. that you could kind of see all four teams of Group B going through. Whereas I don't think Bangladesh have got hope realistically. Um, I think if you actually want to go the kind of the lowest of the ranking, you want to go Afghanistan versus Bangladesh. I think Afghanistan's form, but I do think that Group B is probably tougher to get out of. I do think in Group A that the first game, Pakistan, New Zealand, could almost be a bit of a quarter final going into the semi final because I think it's probably between New Zealand and Pakistan who go through.
Yeah. I think for me, before we dive into the teams, it just feels like whoever comes second in Group A,
No, you're right.
I think are going to win. And I think it's either going to be Pakistan, New Zealand. I think when they qualify second, all right, they're going to then play against the final against India, and I think they're going to beat India. That's just my gut feeling. All right. But let's start with India. Um, Obviously, the likes of Pant, Jaiswal, Abhishek Sharma don't get in this team. They're obviously in terrific form. They're playing all their games in Dubai. But my question about India is, do you think maybe they've peaked too early? Have they been too perfect too soon, Charlie?
I like the idea of them peaking too early and you don't want to win all your games before the tournament starts. I like that. I don't necessarily know if it's gonna be true. They look unbeatable. And you've got to remember, even we go back to the last ODI ICC competition of the 2023 World Cup, the only game they lost was the final. That's kind of looked back as how Australia won. But India were the best team by far in that tournament. They didn't lose a game in the T20 World Cup. I mean, they haven't had a great record since the ODI World Cup. They just haven't played a full strength team. They're going to have a full strength team here, with the exception of Bumrah. I also think Siraj being left out is a weird one because I think he's a really good ODI bowler, especially without Bumrah.
Yeah. Do you
Shami,
Sorry, do you
go
think that with that peaking too early idea, you said India were quality all the way through the World Cup in 2023, then lost it in the final.
on.
Is that not part of the point of peaking too early? The whole point of tournament cricket is playing well when it matters. Australia clearly didn't play that well at the start, but then peaked at the right time. Could we get a repeat of that?
Possibly. I can see it happening. I can see India losing. And I could see India losing to a team like New Zealand, a team like South Africa. I could see it happen. I could see a world where someone just decides, I'm going to pick all of your spin options today, and it's going to score a ridiculous 150, put 400 on, and they can't chase it down. I can see a world where that happens. Do I want to give that a more than 20% chance of happening?
Hmm,
Not really.
no, I agree.
I cannot get over the fact of they just look like the best side, and on paper, on the pitch, it doesn't matter. I just cannot get over the fact of, I think you've got to think, okay, are they using up all their wins, or are they just winning all the time because they're that good?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I
I
think
kind
I'm inclined to agree with you there, Charlie. I think that India just feel in a different league to everyone else. And even if they play at 25% of how good they can be, I reckon they'll roll it. But the only issue remaining, our last point on India, is Virat Kohli and Rohit Sharma. Okay, those two for me, if they get hot, it makes them unbeatable, ridiculously unbeatable. Do you
yeah.
think they can get hot? Maybe Rohit can, but what about Kohli?
I don't think they will. I think there'll be a couple of decent scores out of them. I think will they have the tournaments that they've had in the past? I don't think so, but I think, are they going to need them? That's the question for me. They back down to like 9. They're just a ridiculous batting lineup, and I'd be massively surprised if this wasn't at least Rohit's last tournament. I think Virat might try and go towards 2027. I'm not 100% sure. It depends on his form. I mean, ODI is his best format by far, and I do think that if he can find a bit of form, especially in this tournament and then some ODIs leading up to it. I think maybe he can make the 27. I think he one really feels like his, whereas if he was to win it at the back end of his career, then it would feel like his. And they're going to want to win stuff. I mean, there is so much pressure on this Indian national team. There is so much pressure on the big names of Rohit Sharma and Virat Kohli that you at some point going to have to stand up. And they stood up and won the T20 World Cup. I think this Champions Trophy probably means a lot more to them than a lot of other nations. And I think that's why the big names could step up.
I agree with you again, Charlie. I think Shubman Gill is going to be absolute quality. I mean, he averaged 86 in the three-match ODI series with 100 and 250s, and I think also Shreyas Iyer is going to definitely be one to watch, going a bit under the radar. But Bangladesh, it's a team that neither of us nearly really probably know much about. I don't think the cricket fans in general know a huge amount about Bangladesh. But Charlie, if you could give me, you reckon, maybe one or two players that the average cricket fan is going to be looking out for. Maybe, if Bangladesh are playing in a nothing game at the end, why would I turn on to watch Bangladesh? Who am I looking out for?
Nahid Rana. He's one of the most exciting fast bowlers that I've seen in the last year. He's like him and Will O'Rourke for New Zealand are just two bowlers that are just really exciting. Like Nahid Rana literally turned up from nowhere. I think the Bangladesh Cricket Board literally just pulled him off the streets because he was bowling on a bit of pavement one day, and it was like 95 mile an hour, and it's just really excited. He turned up in the West Indies. No one knew what to expect, and he was just bowling rockets. He's really, really exciting. And I'm really excited to watch him properly. Another one I would say is Mahedi, their spinning all rounder. Valuable runs kind of down the order 6 or 7, and is also not going to be their frontline spinner, but has saved them in a lot of formats, Test, T20s, and ODIs in the last couple of years. So Mahedi and Nahid Rana, two to look out for.
Yeah, talking about Nahid Rana, you got a couple of polar opposites in that team. You've got a couple of blokes who have been round for donkey's years, Mushfiqur and Mahmudullah. I don't understand how these lads keep getting gigs. It feels like every single Bangladesh game I've watched, Shakib Al Hassan, Mahmudullah, and Mushfiqur have been playing. Do you know anything about if these guys are actually still going to contribute, or are they still actually putting in performances, or are they just there for experience?
I don't think they're putting in any performances. I don't think they ever really have. I mean, the problem with Bangladesh is always in the last 10 years has been none of them can bat, none of them get scores. They've always got the lowest averages, no matter what the format is, and they win games by bowling teams out, and especially with spin. Their fast bowling attack is actually quite exciting, but as you said, some of those top order players that have been around for years, and you just think, oh, he's still at the top of the order, is he? I can't see they're gonna. I think that's going to be their biggest problem this tournament. It's just that they're not going to score enough runs.
Yeah, I agree. I think Bangladesh are going to be in trouble. They're playing against three such tricky opponents, and you just feel bad for them, don't you? So, assuming Bangladesh are going to finish bottom, and we think India are probably going to finish top, would you be happy with that assumption?
I would, yes.
Good. So, who do you think then, out of Pakistan and New Zealand, before we dive in, who's going to come second for you?
Oh, I was really hoping you weren't going to ask me that straight away. I was going to try and convince myself. This is the only thing that I cannot have a set opinion on is
Mm.
who finishes second in this group. I think New Zealand are a fantastic side. They are nearly the perfect ODI squad. All round, they have good players in every single position. Pakistan could be the best team in this tournament. There is a world where Pakistan win this tournament, and there is also a world where Pakistan lose all 3 of their games in the group stages. And I cannot call which side is going to be Pakistan. Gun to my head, I would probably go with New Zealand. If Pakistan had Saim Ayub in their lineup, I would have gone Pakistan, but I just think it's going to be such a miss. He looks so good in South Africa. And I think I'm just going to give it to New Zealand, maybe because Middlesex signed Kane Williamson this afternoon. And I'm going to take a little bit of bias in that and say that Kane Williamson is now my favourite player, and New Zealand will make the semi-final over Pakistan.
Wow, it's incredible, isn't it? It's team unpredictable versus team safe and humble, and no one really talks about them. They go under the radar. It's the impossible decision to make. So we talked about Simon Ayub. I mean, he's got 309 innings in ODI. He's averaging 64. It's a pretty astonishing start. But then again with India, you've got a couple of players in there, namely Babar Azam and Shaheen Afridi. These guys have been a little bit to and fro the last few years. They haven't quite got rolling. Do you think a
Hmm.
home Champions Trophy in Pakistan is what's going to turn them on, Charlie? Or do you think it's just going to be Rizwan leading the ship?
To the eye, Barbara Azam has looked better than he has in the last 6 months than he did in the previous 18. So I don't want to count out Barbara Azam, and especially because you're going to get some flat decks. I think he'll be okay. I think the runs that they're looking for are going to come from Salman Ali Agha and Mohammed Rizwan in that middle order. I don't know how the opening experiment for Babar Azam is going to go. I think if he was coming in at three, I'd feel a lot more confident about it. I don't think he's the player that's going to really attack the power play, and if he tries to, that's just not part of his game. He's a player like a Virat Kohli, a Joe Root, a Kane Williamson coming in at 3 or 4, steadying the ship, knocking a few singles around, and I don't want him to try and get bogged down in that power play, trying to attack, trying to be the aggressor. I see that's why they've gone with Fak as a man as his opening partner who can give it a whack. So Barbara Azam can just kind of keep one end, turn a few singles going over. I think he'll have an okay tournament. If he comes out of it averaging 40, I think you'll take that if you're a Pakistan fan. Don't expect him to score 400s in the tournament and win the whole thing for him. Because I think if that happens, then he'll be absolutely fine. In terms of Shaheen Shah Afridi, I've actually been a little bit more impressed with him. Last 6 months, he looked all right in the Bangladesh Premier League. He looked okay in the South Africa series. His pace was up a little bit more than it was in that first test against England. I think he's going to be really important for them, especially with that new ball. I mean, that in swinging kind of full length or even nearly a Yorker that he bowls at the power play, that you see the left armers bowl like a star, like a bowl and issues. So if he's on the song a better tournament than he did say what are we 15 months ago in India.
Yeah, I mean, Shaheen Afridi feels to me that if he fires again, it's a tournament full of you know great icons of these teams just saying, are they going to fire? If they fire, it's game over and they'll beat everyone. I mean, if they all fire at the same time, who knows what's going to happen? But just ending on Group A there, New Zealand. Quick talk about Matt Henry. He's averaged 14 with the ball in 2025. He's played 5 ODIs this year and he's going at 4 per over. How good is he?
I mean, he's probably the fourth best bowler in the world at the moment, in all formats. I'd still have him behind Cummins, Rabada, and Bumrah. But I think he's probably the fourth best bowler in the world, and I don't think that's much of an exaggeration. He's definitely the second best bowler in this tournament, behind Rabada. Um, some of the stuff that he was doing in the Super Smash in New Zealand was ridiculous. I think he had a game where he took 4 wickets for 1 run or something stupid like that.
Blimey.
Okay, not the best competition. He's going to be playing against slightly better batters in this. I think he's great. The thing that worries me about New Zealand is I don't think that Will O'Rourke's a new ball bowler, and they've been using him as a with the new ball. I think he'd be more suited to kind of that middle over job. But without Bolton Southey for the first time, I don't think they've really got another option.
Yeah, I agree. I think New Zealand they look strong in all departments, don't they? I think, some of the batters they've got, Ravindra, Conway, Young, Mitchell, I mean Williamson, Glenn Phillips as well, who's just absolute quality. He knocked 100. He went from 50 to 100 in about 20 balls against Pakistan the other day. But New Zealand are seriously a team to watch out for. And my prediction to finish second in that group is Pakistan. And I'll tell you why at the end when we come to the tournament predictions. Also playing a bit of devil's advocate, but it was always going to be my pick. Now, Group B, you have a little tickle on Afghanistan, if I remember correctly. And
I do.
they had these five spinners. They had Rashid Khan, Mujibur Rahman, Nur Ahmad, Ali Ghazanfar, and Mohammed Nabi. Now, both Ghazanfar and Mujib are out. Does that concern you? And do you reckon it's going to massively affect Afghanistan's chances, or are Nur Ahmad and Rashid Khan just going to take it away?
I think Noor Ahmed and Rashid Khan are probably two of the best white ball bowlers in the world, especially in T20 cricket. I think those skills will transfer. The only thing that would worry me slightly is if we are getting flat pitches that don't spin, it's just coming onto the bat nicely, then maybe that might cause them some issues. Gazanfar's a big miss for them, as long, I mean, Majiva's as well. I really like Gazanfar when I saw him, I think it was the South Africa series where he first came out. There was a point at the end where people were starting to pick him. Now they started to see a little bit more video of him, and it was starting to get a little bit better. But I think Noor Ahmed and Rashid Khan, that's 20 overs that just, they both scream of like 2 for 30 from their 10.
God, I mean, that'd be nice, wouldn't
And yeah, that's 20 overs, 4 for 60. And then you've got to try and score what, another 250
it?
from
Yeah,
the other 30 overs. It's just not going to happen.
yeah. So,
I think that's where they're gonna go. They'll have steady runs at the top of the order. Um, they'll back their middle to lower order to give it a whack at the end, try and get it up to a decent total, and I think they'll defend anything 250 or above. I think you're really struggling, especially if you play teams like Australia, who have just struggled against Sri Lanka in the spin, teams like England, who have just struggled against spin. South Africa are a little bit better at players of spin. They've got players like Klaasen, who's one of the best players of spin in the world. I think they might struggle against South Africa, but playing against Australia and England, that's why I want to pick them, because I don't think there is, outside of maybe Smith and Root, out of those two teams that could pick Noor Ahmed and Rashid Khan. So I just think they're a really good bet. They were 40 to 1 when I got on.
wow. I
They've come
mean,
down to 16 to 1 now.
wow,
So
that's
there's
incredible.
obviously money following it.
Yeah, that is quality odds. But I think that, as you say, England are going to suffer. I think they showed how much they suffered against the spinners in India. But I think it'll be interesting to see if Afghanistan qualifies second, all right, and they go on to play India in Dubai. I think that'd be a seriously interesting game. I think although India are a different class to Afghanistan, maybe Afghanistan can exploit the whole home conditions there and use the Dubai conditions which they love. But just a quick one to finish off Afghanistan. You said they'll be able to get some runs. Who again are we looking out for? Who is going to be that main advocate for getting runs for Afghanistan?
Gurbaz is probably going to score most of them. You can pretty much pencil him in for 70 off 95 most games. They're not going to bat quickly at the start. They're going to keep wickets in hand. I think Gurbaz scored 100, 150 in the warm up yesterday. I like Gurbaz as a bat. In terms of the rest of them, there's not going to be loads of runs. There's no world beaters in there, with the exception of Gurbaz. But that's, I think, the key to Afghanistan. And we saw it in the T20 World Cup. We saw it a little bit in the 50 World Cup, of if they could just get enough runs on the board, they've got the spin attack to defend that. I really like Omazai, and who's the other seamer? I can't think of the top of my head now. Faruqi, I like both of those. I think they're relatively good new ball bowlers, and will offer them something at the death as well.
Yeah, definitely a team to look out for, Afghanistan. South Africa. Now, the main question for me I have over South Africa, it's a massive question, is could they go all the way? But let's start by just diving into what aspect of their team is the real strong point. I mean, they've obviously got quality fast bowlers, Rabada, Marco Jansen, all incredibly horrifying to face, even thinking about it. But they've also got that incredibly strong batting lineup of Klaasen, who's just, he still feels underrated to me in the world, which feels ridiculous because he's just a quality player. But there's also Markram and Bavuma. What do you think is the most dangerous part about South Africa? What should England be scared of?
I think it's that middle order. I think that middle order is so explosive. Of you're going to have Markram, Klaasen, Van der Dusen, Miller. That 3, 4, 5, 6 is just terrifying. I mean, though that four make it into any side in the world. They are all really good. As I said, Clarkson's one of the better players of spin that we have in world cricket. He hasn't been in the best of form. He had a sensational IPL in 2024, fell off a little bit, nearly got him over the line in the T20 World Cup, but got boomered slightly. I think I really like Klaasen. I think he's one of the best batters to watch. And I like Markram. I like Van der Dusen. I like Miller. I just think that you can interchange that middle order however you want to do it to suit. And also, they've got, I reckon, the best and the third best bowler in the tournament in Jansen and Rabada. I think that's where they're strong as well. The
Yeah.
only thing that would worry me about South Africa is that second spinner. Shamsi hasn't looked great. I think Maharaj will do a job. It wouldn't even surprise me if they think, okay, do we just put maybe like a Rickleton or someone in the batting lineup at number 3? We'll bat down. We'll have Miller coming in at 7, and we'll just back a few part-time overs here and there.
Yeah.
That wouldn't surprise me if they went for something like that just to
Yeah.
get around playing Shamsi.
Yeah, I agree. I think South Africa, for me, is a sort of the Pakistan of Group A. It feels like there's players all throughout that team who could either be $1 million, or I can also see them all underperforming at the same time. I feel like I've seen all those South African players before be part of a collapse, be part of a sort of really embarrassing loss for South Africa. And I think that is really possible. Moving on to Australia. So we know none of their fast bowlers really fancy the Champions Trophy. They all sacked it off. And that's just what Australia do. But after their 2-0 defeat to Sri Lanka, do you think Australia are going to flop or are they going to flourish?
Flop. I don't think that they've got a chance. I think it's actually the batting that's going to let them down more than the bowling. I actually think they're going to miss David Warner. That other opening spot that's either going to go to maybe an English that hasn't really done it, maybe a Fraser McGurk who looks like he wouldn't get into a club side, or Short who looked okay at times, but he's more of a T20 slogger than he is a kind of a decent ODI player. They've still got Head, they've still got Smith. I'm sure they'll both be fine. Head's probably the best white ball batter in the world. As you said, that bowling attack doesn't look as good as it could. I like Ellis. I like Spencer Johnson. I don't like the rest of it, really. I think that they're gonna flop.
Yeah, I think Australia, it just feels all set on Travis Head and Steve Smith. And because it's all set on those two, to me, it feels like they're nothing more than a semi-final team. You can never count out Australia, but it just feels like they just don't have enough talent there. But that's Australia. We're going to skip over them because we don't think they're going to do very well. But England, leaving possibly one of the worst teams till last. Be honest, Charlie. Be honest with me. No hope. Do England get out of Group B?
No, um, but there's a world where they do, and it's a strange world, and you're going to have to come with me there for just a little bit, where there is 5 or 3 flat pitches in Pakistan, and all the stars align, and all of a sudden those slogs to mid wicket, instead of going into a fielder's hands, they go into the stands. That they are a team that could score 500 in this tournament. They could also score 100. There it is all or nothing with them. And there is a world where the stars align for 3 to 5 games. They score 450 every time and they win the whole thing. And they don't have to worry that all 4 of their seamers are right on quicks that just bowl bouncers, or they've only got one spinner and haven't really got any decent part-time spin options, and no one really in cricket anymore. Apart, if you look past all of that, just go out and give it a whack and it works. And people are getting caught on the boundary. I give it a 3% chance of that happening. Realistically, I think this team needs to go back to the drawing board. I think Butler's going to go at the end of this tournament, and I think it's going to be miserable.
Yeah, I think it's just that Bazball mentality, isn't it? Just it feels like everyone's asking, play another spinner, and this bouncer strategy is just not going to work. It's not going to work trying to pump them for runs every single ball and just resort to bouncers from Wood and Archer because it looks cool and it's over 90 miles an hour. That's kind of what it's going to be like, but it's Brendan McCullum. We can't argue with this guy. He does what he wants, and quite often it works in some way. So it'll be really interesting, all right? Brendan McCullum's first tournament as England coach. All right. And maybe, just maybe, he's got all the secrets we needed to win the Champions Trophy. So, final thing on
Oh,
England, Charlie. Sorry, yeah, go on.
yeah, cool. I
What
was going to
on,
say, there is a world where I can see that Brendan McCullum doing an interview with a trophy in his hand, a beer in the other, and he's saying, "I told you it would work."
yeah,
I could see it happening.
what a beautiful idea that is. So we've talked about that. We've talked about England. All right. So who's going to come second in Group B, Charlie? Quick fire. Who is it? And first.
Afghanistan
And first.
first, South Africa second, Afghanistan.
Wow. I can see that. However, I'm going to say second Afghanistan as well. Am I? England and Australia aren't getting through. I don't see it. Second, I'll say the same. Second, Afghanistan. First, South Africa. So what that leaves us is Afghanistan versus India in Dubai. Who's going to win that one?
Uh, India,
Okay, so India into the final, and then it's South Africa versus New Zealand. Who wins that one?
New Zealand,
So India, New Zealand in the final. Group A versus Group A. Who is Charlie Cooke's tip for the Champions Trophy?
New Zealand beat India in the final in Dubai.
Beautiful. Sounds unreal. So I'm going to go down a similar route. I'm going to say Pakistan qualify second. So Pakistan then beat South Africa. I'm basically writing off Group B. I don't think they've got what it takes to defeat the tops of Group A. And then it's going to be a Pakistan-India blockbuster final, just like the 2017 version. And Pakistan have got it for me. I see Pakistan going all the way. It's going to be the tournament where they all turn it on, and that is going to be it. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. New Zealand or Pakistan to win the Champions Trophy, whoever qualifies second in Group B. So just to finish, thank you so much, Charlie, for coming on the podcast. Go and check him out on all socials. All the links will be below. But we have that last question. Who has the most ducks in ODI cricket? 34 ducks, averaging 32. All right, I'm going to give you one more clue. You can say a couple names, maybe. I'm going to
Yep.
tell you he's had over 350 games of ODI cricket.
I was going to say they were going to have to play a lot of games. Can I have a continent?
Yes, subcontinent.
Okay, I am going to go with a.
Couple names, just in case you
Oh,
get it, and I can't. I can't say no.
so I'm going to go with a. What about someone like a? Who am I going to go with? Jadeja.
Okay, good thinking. Got another one?
Let's go with a Wazzy Macram.
Oof. Okay, so I can tell you, Wasim Akram is third on the list
Oh,
with 30. So just to say that is an absolute quality little pick. I can't see Jadeja in the top 10. But the answer
It
is,
was a
ladies and
push.
gentlemen, the most ducks in history. I'll tell you, he's a Sri Lankan batter. Top order Sri Lankan batter. And that's the final clue. Get your guesses in. What do you think, Charlie? Final guess.
Angelo Matthews.
Another great shout. The answer is, ladies and gentlemen, it's Sanath Jayasuriya.
No, do you know what? I would have
1989 to
put.
2011. He's got 34 ducks at an average of 32. You know, who would have thought that a player of his quality would just get ducks galore?
I would have had him averaging more. I think that's what's thrown me.
Mm.
I would have thought he averages mid 40s.
So thank you very much for listening. It's been a pleasure having you along the ride. And make sure to check out the TikTok, the Instagram, search in what's he on about, click follow, click like, check Charlie out as well while you're there. And give us a 5-star rating on the podcast. Leave a review. Don't say the podcast is rubbish, but anything good, really appreciate it. Thank you very much for listening. And I hope it got answered this week. What was he on about? Cheers.